things that we've talked about a lot as a group is the fact that this piece is one of the actually relatively few pieces in the percussion repertoire that relies on specific pitches or melodies. You're not dealing with harmony or melody really in this piece. You deal with contour, but no specific pitches. So I think a lot of my instrument choice has sort of been guided by the idea that you want to make a really strong timbral shape to the sounds that you pick. I start off the piece playing congas. I think for the drum choice, there's a lot of different choices you could make, but Adam and I trade a lot of drum lines early on in the piece. So having a big, deep drum that when it's a little bit softer, you can really hear the cool overtones of the drum and that kind of stuff made a lot of sense. So part of the notation is that each player is supposed to get 2 different sounds out of their drums, and that's maybe a little more easily accomplished with the congas than some of the other instruments. You can really get a deep sound from the middle of the drum and then a really high sound on the edge. So when I'm playing at the beginning, you can really hear the alternation between the different parts there. And like I was saying, when it's quiet, you can really appreciate the ringing has a lot of different overtones in it. Later on in the piece, when it gets a little bit crazier, I really do get into a full conga slap. So it's a little bit more of one direct sound, but obviously you have to do that so that you can cut through the sound of the ensemble when everything gets rolling. And the other thing that I play at the beginning are these 2 sistrums. It's actually notated tambourine in the score, but there's a lot of detail about accents that happen. One of the themes that keeps coming back is this shaking sound with an accent on it. And people have lots of different solutions for that. I found that these sistrums had, first of all, just an awesome sound, something that I really got excited about. And then also made it super easy to play the accents. So that was just, actually, as soon as I tried it, I knew this is the perfect decision to make all the tambourine stuff. So just moving through the next section, I play a lot of tin cans, and these cans are actually just like literally, if you go to your school cafeteria or something like that, these are going to be the big can that has, kidney beans or something in it. And, at the very bottom here, I have actually just like a pot for potting flowers or that kind of stuff. I really like the sound of this low one being a little bit deeper than the deepest sound I could get with the sort of traditional aluminum cans. And we play with, the rattan side of a couple of plastic mallets. Later on in the piece, I need to use the plastic side of these mallets to play some clave. So I always use these ones to play the tin cans. At letter H, when Josh and Jason and I have this little clave trio that happens, we really like to get it up in our hands so that we can be looking at each other as we're playing. It makes it a little bit more difficult to play the really fast stuff, but it means that we can have a lot more communication. So there's a trade-off, but we're trying to make the decision for the more important thing in that section, which when all 3 of us are going, it's really tough to keep together, and there's this retardando that happens where we have to really communicate with each other. Later on in the piece, when things are really rocking, I have to play some very, very fast stuff, so I definitely need to use 2 mallets to get it to come out. So in that part of the piece, I made this little, clave stand out of some foam that I just cut, roughly tried to get where the nodes would be on the clave, and if I play it in the middle, it gets a really nice sound. And when this part comes in later in the piece, it's actually much more subdued. We've already been really rocking at the high point, and things kind of come down a little bit when the clave comes in. So I actually like the fact that my clave is a little bit hidden. The audience might not necessarily see what I'm doing, and the sound is a little bit shielded by being behind my cans and things. But it means that I can play at a nice mezzo forte level. But that can really be a point in the piece where it pulls back. For most of the clave stuff, I use the M141s, and I've just found that they're plastic. They're not going to be super hard, so you don't get stuff that's too cracky. but it's not so soft that you lose the definition of the rhythm as you're playing. I think this was maybe the trickiest decision in the piece for me, which is the cricket callers. I actually emailed about as many people as I could find to figure out what instrument I should use for this part. Groups like Amadinda and Nexus use actually split bamboo. I think it's sometimes called a devil chaser. But I found that, the part as it's notated is really supposed to be a sustained sound, and that's not something that you can do with the split bamboo. You have to kind of tremolo with your fingers or tap a rhythm. And I just personally decided to go with a choice that I could shake and get a little bit more of a connected sound. So these are actually just, something you find in a toy store. This one I found to be a little bit too resonant, so I put some gaff tape on it or that kind of thing. But literally, you would just find these are called noisemakers or something. People will get them for, 4th of July or for New Year's. And this is actually a particularly special one that has a smiley face on it. And then, of course, there's the jawbone, which in this case, I'm playing on a vibroslap. I like this vibroslap because it's a little bit less sustained than other vibroslaps that I've played. And I actually play it not the way you're supposed to play it. I put my thumb up on top of it, and I hit it so that I get a nice dead sound, dead enough that I can hear the attack in the sections where I want it. And then if I scoop my thumb back, I can get a longer sound when I want to have that too, so I can sort of alternate. I can get a couple of different sounds there. The jawbone also works really great, but it's just actually an instrument that breaks very easily and often doesn't cut through the ensemble as easily as the vibroslap does. So, you want to choose the instrument maybe based on the hall, based on the situation where you're playing. I think it's something that definitely, if you have a jawbone around like this one, it's worth trying out sometimes. The cool thing about it is, when it's dried out, the teeth actually just rattle inside the jaw, so that's where the rattling sound comes from. You have to be really careful when you're playing it because it's a pretty delicate instrument. Depending on how dry it is, it can crack pretty easily. But yeah, you can get the rhythms very clearly on this. So when you're in the right place to play it, it definitely makes a great sound. The actual choice to play the Ruta is because at the end, Cage notates to play with the cricket callers on the conga. And this is part of the cricket collar controversy of sorts that I ran into when I was trying to figure out what this instrument really was supposed to be and what Cage intended. To a certain extent, it came down to just, after I asked enough people, I had to make a decision that worked for me. So, the cricket collar that comes in earlier is all about a sustained sound. But later on in the piece, when you're playing on the drums, you need something that's really going to cut through. I mean, I couldn't really use this to play on the drums and get an interesting sound. There are a lot of different options out there to kind of play with different sticks or mallets or that kind of thing. The Ruta has a very unique sound, and it's a timbre that hasn't been in the palette yet. So it sticks out a little bit, and it's supposed to be, it's a new sound. It's something that hasn't been used until this point near the end of the piece. So I wanted it to be that. And I also didn't want it to be too precise. Playing with a stick on the drum would be very much just one sound, and I think that the Ruta provides a little bit of a round sound. It lasts just a second longer than playing with a stick. And of course, the last thing in my setup is the conch shell that comes in at the end. And this was definitely something that took me a little bit of time to learn how to do. I actually, when I got the part, I said, you know what, I'm just going to sit down and every single day, I'm going to do at least 5 minutes of trying to blow the conch shell. And some days it just didn't work. But that's okay, because if you're doing it every day, it's like the days that it works slowly, progressively, there's more and more of those and less of the days where nothing comes out. And, I use a little bit of a tonguing technique to get the rhythms that are notated in the score. And I just pray a lot before I start blowing into it. So. strangely enough, now that I think about it, I don't blow it straight on is the secret to my technique. I have to blow it out of this side of my mouth. And I don't know why that's the way it is, but doing it every day was the thing that sort of taught me, okay, 90% of the time when it's over here, I can get it to go right. So that's what works. I've definitely found that making the personal choice not only allows me to kind of personalize my part and really come up with my own ideas about how this stuff should sound, I found that building my setup actually was one of the things that helped me to memorize the piece, because there were plenty of sections in the piece where, you know, I would be putting one thing down here and already looking at the mallets that I needed to play the cans. And so creating a layout, and I basically set this up exactly like this every time that I can, because there's a visual memory, a set of cues that I've built in just from, you know, the time I put in selecting each of my instruments and putting them in the place where they are.